Hey guys, welcome back to chapter 6 of the Sconces. This is Keith Busher from the Art of Keith Busher Precious Mutations. It's been a couple days since I did a video. It's now Sunday, and I figured I spent most of the weekend actually setting up my YouTube channel. So this is new and exciting. On top of my Facebook pages where I'm posting this stuff, I'm also posting this stuff now onto my brand new YouTube page, which is also Art of Keith Busher Precious Mutations. So if you look that up on YouTube, you will find my channel. Currently, there's the 5 previous videos that I've put up leading up to the point where we're at now. Hey guys, what's up? And if you are interested in following along, we'll be doing similar projects to this one. I will be doing original sculptures. I will show you how I do some painting with firecrackers. I will show you how I do some other stuff. I will show you figurines that I will strip down and then rebuild. All kinds of fun stuff that I have plans for you guys. There's some really neat projects I got coming up too, which I think you'll be really interested in. I know we have Halloween first, and Christmas is right around the corner. So every year I do zombie nutcrackers, which are like my 2 holiday thing. You can put them up at Halloween, leave them up till Christmas. I'll show you how to make one of those. So there'll be lots of fun stuff coming up on the page. So if you don't mind going to the Art of Keith Busher Precious Mutations and signing up and clicking subscribe and clicking like to my page, that would be huge for me. It's something that I'm lagging a little bit behind on when it comes to social media. I know that the details too are based off of how long you watch the video. So don't click and start watching the video if you're only planning on watching it for like 30 seconds, because they will basically assume that my video is incredibly boring and it's not worth watching, and they won't promote it to anybody. So unless you're going to watch like most of it or the whole thing, you got time to watch most of it or the whole thing, please do watch all the way through. I'll try and keep it entertaining and informative. So here we are. Well, last time we started sculpting the chin and the lips and the orbital bones, and I said today we're going to come back and we're actually going to do like the forehead and the nose, and possibly if we have enough time and stuff, we'll do some ears and things like that too. Okay, so as per usual, I am using my favorite stuff, the Aves Epoxy Sculpt. Aves also has a thing on Instagram right now where they are trying to get 2,000 followers. They're at 1,980, and at 2,000, they're giving away a whole bunch of their product. So, if you want to try what I'm doing and you don't want to have to pay for it, that would be a really cool way to win yourself some stuff. So head on over to their Instagram, which is Aves Studio, AVES STUDIO on Instagram, and you will be able to follow them. And if we get to 2,000, then they'll give away some free stuff. Okay, so as I said, remember it's a 2-part system, so part of it's gray, part of it's colored. You take the 2 pieces, you mix them together. This is for people who might just be joining the party a little bit late. So you just mix it together until it's one consistent color. It's kind of like warm plasticine at this point. Okay, and then we're going to start working on the forehead. Now, one of the good things that you can do here in my studio, I've covered it up with a big black blanket, but one of the things to do is if you have a camera, like a computer set up, pull up a few different pictures of references of faces and heads of people that you know, somebody you want it to look like, just so you have a reference. You don't have to try and make it look like them, but it gives you a good idea of what a head looks like, what a face looks like. If you're looking for a specific expression, you can Google search, smiling, sad, angry, and that gives you an idea of a bunch of different people's kind of facial expressions and what they look like when they're making faces. So it helps you. It really does. You study it, you just look at it, and then you try and emulate it. That's pretty much all you're going to do. And this stuff has a long enough working time that if you're trying to do something and it looks terrible, because trust me, I have, if you're like, that guy doesn't look angry, he looks constipated, then you can easily just tear it off and start over again. It's not going to set. it's not going to completely harden for 24 hours. So the thing about a forehead is it's pretty flat, right? Like here you see a forehead, and then it comes out and there's a protruding brow. So kind of like what we did with the bottom lip, you want to kind of flatten it out a bit at the top, but you want to leave this part so that you can kind of roll it over a bit, and this will give us enough clay that we can kind of build our expression. Oh my goodness, I have not told you rule number 1 when it comes to sculpting, and I'm sure it's a painting / sculpting rule. Okay, so here I'm just blending this into the clay that we already have. So you see, sorry, I'll tell you the rule in a second, but you see here that this is hard clay. This is the clay that we did 2 days ago. It's rock solid now. But you see, like, how flawlessly this clay just blends into itself. And if you do have problems where you end up with lines or whatever, once it's solid like this, you can sand it, you can drill it, you can do all kinds of fun stuff with it. So we'll be able to easily hide those. But the good thing about zombies and dead things is they're all wrinkly, so everything has lines in it. So we're just going to kind of try and flatten this head out a little bit more. Keep in mind, we're going to end up having this guy's jaw come down here too. So we don't have to worry so much about detail up in here. But we do want to get his brow down here. Okay. Like I said, you want to kind of blend this in here. So we get like a nice... You can just see that it... Get my brush a little bit wet. They suggest on the AVE site that you use... they have a safety solvent. So when I use water on it, it ends up getting a little bit milky. But I've never had a problem because I always end up painting over my stuff anyway. So that milky part goes away. Cat hair. That milky part goes away for me. But if you're planning on just using the base color that it is and you're just going to sand it and leave it that natural color, you might want to try their safety solvent because it definitely takes away the milky and you won't end up with a mottled look to it. Oh yeah, the rule. The rule is never, ever, ever, if you're having a tea or a coffee while you're working, put it completely on the opposite side of your desk from where you wash your tools and your brushes, because I cannot tell you how many drinks I've ruined by dipping my paintbrush into my tea. But that's an old rule and everybody knows that one, right? Right. Everybody's experienced that? Maybe? Okay. So, if I turn this to the side, you kind of see where our eyes are at, and our brow is really hanging over. Looks a little bit Cro-Magnon, a bit of a guy. He has no nose yet. The reason I put on the brow before the nose is if you actually look at a nose, you build the nose up and it goes up and underneath this part. So you end up somewhere in this brow where your nose goes back and then comes back up into this brow. So I always like to put on my brow first and then come back with the nose, and then build the nose underneath and make the nose come up. And knowing where my brow is means I'm not going to make a nose that's too proud or too prominent. Okay, and I'm leaving, my guy looks really surprised right now, right? Because I haven't even done the eyelids yet. So the eyelids is a completely separate thing that I do after. So here, I'm not going to try and flatten this all down. All I'm going to do is take this little bit where it's rolled over, and I'm just going to kind of blend it in, because what this is going to do is it's going to give me a nice layer that I can add my eyelids onto later. But it gives us a good brow look. So you still just want to kind of follow the shape of your skull, right? If you've sculpted your own skull, that's cool, that works. Especially if you're making like a weird skull, you can make the eyes wherever you want them to be. You can make, a completely unique alien type skull. But here I'm just adding the clay, pushing it down. This is mostly just to make sure that the clay adheres to the parts that are underneath it and everything, and it's nice and solid so that when I try and work in the details, it's not gonna like compress and go in weird shapes and ways. Now, a human head, the forehead, has like here and here it kind of flattens out. It goes in a little bit. I don't have as much clay on this side as I do on the other, but we will try and work that out. So where your temples are, it kind of flattens out a bit and it goes in. So you want to make sure that you're not puffing out or your head's going to look like it's a little swollen. Maybe you got stung by a bee, or maybe ate some strawberries or peanuts that you're allergic to, and everything's just swelling out of proportion. But we don't want that because this guy's been on our stick for a little while. He's decomposing. He's getting a bit gaunt. And don't worry about so much around back here because we'll probably add some hair and stuff like that too if we can. So right now he's kind of expressionless. He just has a forehead, right? And we have our temples where it goes in. So you have your orbital bone that goes out just a little bit past where that temple is, kind of pushing the temples in. Okay, now we can start working on our expression. Now this guy was impaled on a post, so I'm going to guess that he's probably not all that happy about it. I don't know. Maybe he is happy about it. Maybe. So we're going to try and make him a little bit angry. So we're going to start. You got your nose right here. Obviously, that's where it's going to be. So we can start working at pushing this brow down a little bit here. Right? We still want to leave this empty area so that we can add eyelids in later. We just kind of want to start pushing in and building that eyebrow-ish area. You have a couple options here when you're doing a brow, all depending on what you want to do. If you want to add hair later, it might look a little bit weird if you add natural hair on the top but don't have hair on the eyebrows, if that makes sense. If that's the case, it might not. It's all up to you. It's all what you want to do. So you can either do like, you can add hair here, like you can glue hair on, which is usually what I do with this stuff after. I use like a jewelry glue, so it's got a little bit of a stretch to it so it doesn't just get brittle and fall off. And or you can just kind of carve in. And even if I'm adding hair when it comes to the brow, so even if I'm just adding hair when it comes to the eyebrows, I will add a bit of texture to it because when we're going to add shading and those sorts of things, it'll just add another element. It'll be like in between hairs, you'll be able to see some of the detail and the fine details and stuff. So he's a little bit angry, but he's dead too, so he's not super angry. We're just going to push this down a little bit. And I'm going to stop about there because I want to add the nose in before I really start going into the forehead. So the center of the forehead, where the two brows are, is where the expression comes in. So you're going to have, like, if you want frustrated or angry, you're going to have sloping lines down. But about a third of the way up the forehead, those lines stop happening, right? You end up starting to get more, just furrowed lines. So this is a similar tool, but it's got like a straight edge on it. Mine is not very clean, so this might be a little bit choppy. But you can just go right across the forehead and just add some wrinkles and some furrows. And you know what? If I don't like it, I just smooth it out again with my thumb and I start over. That's the beauty of clay. So I'm going to try and find a brush that doesn't have as much goo on it like this one. This one's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit firmer. Instead of making the same problem twice, I'm going to wet it a little bit. And then I can add in those furrows. And don't go from one side of the head to well, it's yours, so you do what you like. But I don't like to go from one side of the head to the other because nobody's wrinkles go from one side of the head to the other. So you need some slightly longer ones, but wrinkles are all made up of tiny wrinkles that all just kind of blend together. And you'll have some where they knock over and they connect to each other, and that adds to it. But And the other thing about eyebrows is, if you look at yourself in the mirror, there's another way to do it. You can always look at yourself in the mirror and make silly faces and try and emulate those faces. Take a selfie, do it of yourself, right? You know the expression that you want to see. Between your brows, you actually have like a little tiny spot where it indents, where the nose is going to come up and it meets here. But your eyebrows, unless you have like a serious unibrow, generally don't bang into each other. There's like a little set of muscles in here. I don't know what they're called. I'm not a doctor. That was a terrible, terrible attempt at Scotty. But there's a set of muscles in here basically that pull the brow together, but they're not part of your eyebrows. Okay, so I'm going to take my knife, because I said I like to put details where my eyebrows are going to be. And again, I'm not dragging it, I'm not doing anything. What I'm doing is I'm just setting up a series of lines. And then I'll show you another trick that I learned quite a while ago. Do a series of lines of where your hair follicles are going to be, where your depth is going to be. And then if you want to add kind of a little bit to it, what you do is you just go against the blade a little bit, where you've already got your lines. So you just push it back, not a lot, just a little tiny bit, right? And what that does is it pushes the clay back up, but not too crazy, not too bad. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. It's kind of late on a Sunday and I'm a bit tired, but you're just pushing back a little bit, and that adds a little bit. And now we go back again and we can pull those a little bit. And it creates kind of a, the lighting is not very good, sorry. I'll try and put it in a spot where you can see. So I push back and then I drag it. And that just creates a little bit more of a, I got a chalky part there. That's easy to just work it out. And that creates a bit of an eyebrow look. And then, like I said, we'll probably add a little bit of hair there. And it will, after we've painted it and everything like that, and it will make it nice and look nice and textured and deep. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing to this side, where we're going to just make a bunch of little lines and indents, right? And then we're going to start pushing that back, and that creates little bits of hair that stick up. It just gives a little bit of depth and pushes that clay up, and then we drag it back again. And that gives us some eyebrows to start with. What do you think? Okay, so that's our forehead. Pretty quick and easy and straightforward. We got some texture, some lines, some wrinkles. Not too deep here, just basically the weight of the tool is enough. I'll try and shade it a little bit. The weight of the tool is enough to give you that impression, because we're going to wash it like we did with the teeth with a darker skin tone, and then we're going to highlight it, and then we're going to highlight that. You know, we're going to do our dry brushing and 3 or 4 layers of paint, and this will stand out like amazing. Okay, so now we have a forehead. Now we need a nose. So I mixed up a big enough chunk that we should, it's gotten a little bit hard. Like I said, this stuff has got a life of about 2 hours or 3 hours, depending on how long you use it. But I will say that after about 40 minutes or so, the adhesive starts to go on it a little bit. So it's still malleable, and it's still, but the stickiness of it is just not near as strong as it once was. So you'll end up having to really blend a lot unless you warm it up again with your hands. On the page, they use nitrate gloves all the time. I don't. That's probably a really bad thing on my part. Whatever you do, whether you're wearing gloves or you're not wearing gloves, do not touch like your eyes with this and stuff. It's got some chemicals in it, and it's probably the company itself makes a kid's version of this that's called critter clay, And if you want your kids to try it and they want to play in your craft room, that's a non-toxic version that you can use. This isn't like super toxic by any stretch of the imagination. Don't eat it or anything, but they have a non-toxic version for children, which is probably a very good choice. That way, they're more inclined to eat stuff. So I just have a little tiny bit of clay here. This might even be too much clay for a nose. I'm going to take a little bit off. This is just a little tiny amount. See? There's my finger. That's how much clay I have for a nose. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a little... Oh, almost dropped it. A little like rounded teardrop. And we're just going to tuck that right up underneath that brow. Alright. And you can already see it kind of looks like a nose. It looks like a Muppet nose. So I start at the bridge and I work that down into that orbital bone. Remember we talked about working it up to about halfway where the eye is. Right? You're going to try and keep that center. You're just going to push that right in. Blend it nicely like we did on the outside where the temple was. We're going to blend that with the piece that is the orbital bone. Now we get that little crease here between. Remember I told you the brow and the nose, it goes right up underneath the nose. So I'll try and blend that and get rid of that little tiny seam that's in there. Just enough. And then we can push our brow down a little bit to cover that up. Right. We're going to blend that into that part so that the orbital bone and the cheek skin looks like it goes right up into the nose, just like it does on your face. Hopefully, if it doesn't, what's wrong with your face? Might want to get that looked at. It's probably not healthy. Okay. So there's all kinds of different noses, and this is where pulling up pictures of what you want it to look like will work for you. So there's pointy noses, there's long noses, there's hook noses, there's gross noses, there's like, oh crap, I totally... See, this is what I meant by you got to be really careful because sometimes you stick your hand in a spot when you're going too far ahead, which I'm not. It's just I had to practice a little bit. I just pressed in his forehead, so now I've mashed some of my eyebrow down. So now I gotta fix that, go back and fix it, but we got 2 hours of working time, so lots easy peasy. Fix some of these creases on his forehead. Try and get rid of my fingerprint that's in there now. Alright, so like I said, there's lots of different noses that you can have. You can have hook noses, you can have big honking noses, big bulbous noses. I'm just going to kind of try and do a bit of a generic nose on this one. So don't worry if your nose looks like it's going too long down into your top lip, because this is where we kind of have to push back up towards the eye. I'm using a little rounded tip here. You can use the stippler, like we talked about before, which is just like a little ball on a stick. And we just kind of push that up. And you're trying to keep the nose. And if you go too high, it's fine. We can just push it right back down again. Right? We're trying to create those nostrils. You're trying to keep it somewhat straight and even. And then it's just kind of a bit of fine tuning and playing around with it. Flatten your nostrils down so it doesn't look like he's got a bogey in there. You don't want his nose going off to one side unless he's like a boxer or something and he's been punched in the face a bunch of times. So there we go, that's a basic kind of nose. I want him to have a bit of that modeling texture, so I'm going to take my orange peel and I'm going to add some texture to the top of his nose, which then flattened his nose out again. So we take our, where did it go? Where did the little round tool I just had go? Interesting. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we're just going to take that and reshape the nose a little bit. So don't worry if it seems a bit flimsy, because I've got a good connection here up at the brow, and I know it's touching down at the base. Once this solidifies over a couple of hours, it's going to be rock hard, and that nose isn't going to move anywhere. We're attached here, we're attached at the eyes. Okay, so that's the forehead and the nose. I'm going to stop there because we're at 25 minutes, and then I will make a new video tomorrow that will include the eyelids and the ears and the cheeks, and what we can do after that is basically the back of the head's pretty easy. Then we add some hair, or we paint it, and then we add some hair, and that's pretty much it. So you see we kind of have our decapitated, slightly decrepit head. If you turn it to the side is always a good view to look at when you're trying to establish, am I on the right track? Am I making a nice face, right? So the nose doesn't go too far out past the mouth. The eyes are there. The forehead isn't, protrudes too far or not enough, right? But basically, having a good base like these plastic skulls is a great way to get an idea for facial structure. And then after a while, you won't even need these faces anymore. You don't need the skulls anymore, because you are just natural at. They're a great practice kind of tool, and you'll just naturally know what a face is supposed to look like and how you're supposed to sculpt a face. So you won't need those anymore. You can just start with like a foam block, like a foam egg or something like that, and build off of that. Anyway, there is our, it's a little dark, too dark. There is our face so far. Our teeth and our eyes are painted. Tomorrow we're going to work on some, I'm seeing that my eyebrows are a little bit, one is much higher than the other, so I'm going to flatten this one out a little bit. Tomorrow we're going to talk about eyebrows and ears, and and cheeks. And I hope you guys are happy so far. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Please, again, remember that I now have my tutorial up. We're going to be building a bowling pin vulture is one of the projects that I want to do. So that'll be kind of neat. I have a really big kind of Cthulhu piece that I want to build, so that'll be pretty neat. So lots of cool stuff coming up. I might do them a couple of projects. As I say, I like to have a couple of projects on the go at the same time, so I might be making multiple videos at the same time. As I put this product down, I'll pick up something else, and we'll go from there. Alright, thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to go to my YouTube page and like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Have a good night.